All right, let's dive into something huge, a really big shift in how the best products get made today. We're talking about moving away from just, cramming in more features, and instead focusing on the feelings and the outcomes that actually make for a great experience. But let me start with a question for you. Think about that one app or that one website you just love using. Why does it feel so effortless, so intuitive? I'll tell you what, it is not an accident. There's a really deep strategy going on there, and it's all about focusing on your journey, not just a list of functions.
So, to really get this new way of thinking, we've got to first talk about the old way, a really common problem that so many companies fall into. It's called the feature factory trap.
Okay, so here's the fundamental tension, right? For years, the logic was super simple. More features must equal a better product. But the reality? Users don't actually care about your feature list. They couldn't care less. What they care about is what they can get done. And it's right in the middle of that conflict that a lot of good products just lose their way.
And this is what leads to what people call a feature factory. You can almost picture it, right? It's like being on a treadmill. The whole goal is just to ship the next thing off the assembly line, just to clear out a backlog. There's very little thought about whether any of it actually makes a real person's life better or if it helps the business at all. It's just all motion with no real guarantee of progress.
So, how do we get off that treadmill? How do we escape the trap? Well, the answer is a total change in how we look at the problem. It's about shifting our whole focus away from features and instead starting to think in journeys.
And that mind shift, it all comes down to the question you're asking. You stop asking, hey, what cool thing can we build with our technology? And instead you start asking, what is our user actually trying to accomplish right now? It seems like a small change, but believe me, it changes absolutely everything. Now, to do this right, we have to get our terms straight. This table here breaks down two really important ideas. First, you have the user journey. Think of this as the micro view. It's what's happening when someone is literally inside your app, clicking buttons. But then there's the customer journey, and that's the macro view. It covers every single touch point, from the first ad they ever see to the angry tweet they send a year later. You got to understand both to win. Now, a lot of teams use this format here. It's called a user story to guide their work. And on the surface, it's a great little tool. It helps you frame a task from the user's point of view. But, and this is a big but, if you're not careful, focusing only on the task can lead you right back onto that feature factory treadmill.
And this leads us to a way bigger, much more important question. Forget the task for just a second. What's the real problem here? The deep down motivation. What is the job that this person is hiring your product to do for them?
And that question is the whole idea behind this incredible framework called Jobs to be Done. It forces you to think about the outcome, not the action. For instance, the job isn't to use a drill. The job is to have a quarter-inch hole. See the difference? That kind of insight is what opens the door to real innovation, not just piling on more features.
See, once you know what job your user is really trying to do, you can zero in on what actually counts, the most important parts of their journey. We're talking about the moments that truly matter. Because let's be real, not all interactions are created equal.
And this isn't some newfangled idea. Let me tell you a story. Back in the 80s, the CEO of Scandinavian Airlines, a guy named Jan Carlson, had this amazing realization. He figured out that the entire perception of his multi-billion-dollar airline didn't depend on the fancy planes or the food. It was built on thousands of tiny 15-second interactions between his staff and the passengers. He called these moments of truth. Okay, fast forward a few decades, and Google took that core idea and brought it into our digital world. They identified 5 modern moments of truth. It all starts with a trigger, some need you have. Then comes what they call the zero moment of truth, or ZMOT. This is all the research you do online before you even see the product. Then you have the first moment, your first encounter. The second moment is the actual experience of using it. And finally, the ultimate moment. That's when you share your experience, which then becomes the next person's zero moment of truth. It's a loop.
So if we're going to design for these moments, we absolutely have to get inside our users' heads. We need to understand the psychology behind it all, specifically the kind of weird and totally counterintuitive way our brains remember experiences.
Now, here's what most of us get wrong. We think our memory works like this chart, like a simple average. If most of the experience was just kind of okay, then we'll remember the whole thing as okay. But that's not how our brains work. Not at all.
This is the reality.
It's a principle called the peak-end rule, and it says that our memory of an event isn't an average. It's almost entirely defined by just two things: the most emotionally intense moment, that's the peak, and how the experience finished, the end. All that stuff in the middle, the duration, our brains pretty much just toss it out.
And this is huge because it gives us a playbook, a literal 3-step strategy. First, you have to intentionally design a signature positive peak, one awesome, unforgettable moment. Second, you have to be absolutely ruthless about getting rid of intensely negative moments, because just one of them can ruin the memory of the whole thing. And third, you have to obsess over a strong, satisfying finish.
And getting this right at the beginning of a user's journey, well, it's not just important, it's do or die. Just look at this number. Studies show that up to 80% of new users can just disappear after one day if they don't get that immediate sense of value. Your first impression isn't just one important thing, it's practically everything.
So how do you fight that massive drop-off? Well, you use a little psychology. First, you reduce cognitive load. Don't throw a million things at them at once. Our brains have limits. Second, show them their progress. It's a weird quirk called the Zeigarnik effect. Our brains hate leaving things unfinished. And third, you've got to shrink the time to value. Get them to their aha moment, that magic point where they finally get it, as fast as you possibly can.
All right, let's pull all these pieces together. We've talked about journeys, psychology, these key moments. How does this turn into an actual real-world product strategy? Well, you do it by designing for the destination, not just the next step.
This is what a modern journey-led roadmap looks like. It's not just a list of features. It starts with the big picture, the product strategy, which is your why. Then, that why gets broken down into OKRs, objectives and key results. These define the specific user outcomes you want to create. And finally, you have your KPIs, key performance indicators. Those are the hard numbers that tell you if you're actually pulling it off.
And that right there, that's the whole point. This is where the magic happens. This framework creates a direct, solid line between the user's emotional journey, their peaks, their ends, their aha moments, and the actual goals of the business. You're not making a choice between a happy user and a healthy business anymore. You're using one to create the other.
So, I'm going to leave you with one last question to really chew on. Based on everything we've just talked about, if your customer could only remember 2 single moments from their entire experience with your product, what would you want those 2 moments to be? The answer to that, that's the heart of the journey-led revolution.